Hello, podcast listeners and anime fans. This is Torn.
And I'm Andrew.
And today's episode of Anime Digression is all about, here we go, Tsukimichi Isekai Dochu, aka Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy. Oh man, one of these days I'll get good at saying Japanese.
We'll never get better at Japanese.
No.
We'll just get Jake on to do all the titles.
Yeah, well, we'll just have him record them and then I'll just play the audio.
Yeah, just voice, match your lips with it.
Yeah, we'll make it work. Warning though, spoiler alert, this is a spoiler podcast, so we will be talking about all the stuff in the series. So watch it ahead of time if you want to. As far as watching ahead of time, we don't know what we're doing next. Watch out on Twitter if you want to watch ahead. I'll try to announce it on Twitter the moment we know what we're going to do next. With that, Andrew, what's your rating?
I really like this, though I knew about it beforehand, so I'm a little biased towards it. I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Hey, did you have a synopsis?
In general, it's a show about a guy who gets transported to another world with absurd levels of power that only grow stronger, and he hates it and gets roped into everyone else's schemes.
That sounds about right. So 8 out of 10. Yeah, you really liked it. Moonlight Fantasy follows the classic fantasy isekai formula and yet also manages to turn it on its head with unique takes on the tropes. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I couldn't quite give it an 8. It was I kept fighting over whether it was a 7 or a 10. Or sorry, 7 or 8.
7
or 10.
Yeah, 10's a little high there.
I just couldn't quite give it an 8. And I think we'll talk about a few reasons why once we get into it. With that, let's cover what happens for those who, haven't watched it since it stopped airing a few weeks ago.
Right.
Or just those who haven't watched it. Mizumi Makoto randomly finds himself in front of the god Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi informs Mizumi that he is being sent to another world due to a contract between Mizumi's parents and the goddess of the other world. Upon meeting the goddess finds him hideous and refuses to use him as a hero, only giving him the ability to understand all languages other than human, and throws him into the edge of the world. Due to the differences between his new world and Earth, Mizumi finds himself to have enhanced physical abilities, as well as the powers given to him by Tsukuyomi. Mizumi comes across Emma, and to save her and her village, Mizumi faces off against Shin the Elder Dragon. After befriending Shin and making her his servant, Shin creates a demi-plane where they plan to make a flourishing city. Mizumi proceeds to then befriend the Elder Dwarves, Mist Lizards, Alkei, and Forest Ogres, welcoming all of them into the demi-plane. He also manages to add the Black Spider and the Lich as servants as well, all during the process of building up his own trading company and attempting to learn more about his parents.
And very few of that was on his own
Yeah.
prerogative. He just wanted to create the illusionary city at one point, and Shen, aka Tomoe, just is like, hey, what if we did all this other stuff?
Oh, you want a city? Well, you need inhabitants. You need all this. I'm just going to go ahead and do this all.
Men.
I think that leads into what I think is one of the strong suits of this show, and that is the character building, like the characters themselves. I feel like the show is almost carried by the characters.
It absolutely is.
And I think Tomoe is a big example of that, because when we were rewatching, I even messaged you, and I was like, I forgot how much of this was Tomoe. Like, she immediately...
Tomoe just like... immediately is like, hey, we should do this. We should do. Hey, I already set this up. Hey, while you were unconscious, I set up this contract between you and the Black Spider. So she's now your servant. Like, wait, I thought I had to consent to this.
Yeah, the fact that you don't even have to consent to it. I actually had a list of so I had a note that Tomoe is amazing, because we watched it the first time, and we decided we were going to cover it, and I went to rewatch it. I remember Tomoe being almost the, not stupid, but the bumbling idiot type. Like, You almost
You
feel like
you you were you wanted you saw more of her I want to be a samurai
yeah.
thing and just kind of ignored
Well, and
the
on top,
background parts of her like setting stuff
yeah.
up in the background.
Well, and a lot of that also is early in the show, like where
Mhm.
they're setting up like how smart and actually like like she's super intelligent. Um, but my brain was remembering her more for like the obsession with old Japanese samurais, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But it's like, okay, so she's the one that initiated inviting the high orcs to the demiplane right away. It's like he's like, hey, it would be nifty to set up like a world or city in your demiplane. She's like, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna invite the high orcs in. She's the one that does that. She's the one that tells Baron that the black spider was cursed and lured the black spider to him to begin with. So it's like,
Right. I mean, that's just to make sure that the dwarf doesn't have any negative opinions of Mio, the giant black spider. Like, oh no, she was cursed. She didn't have any control of her actions.
but yeah, that's the thing is actually I'm trying to remember. I thought I
Yeah,
made a note about why she led the
you
black
clear the
dragon.
karma. Hmm?
Oh yeah, she wanted to see a grand monster battle, like in the some of the old Japanese films where they had like samurai fighting monsters. She wanted to see
Right.
that, so she lured the black spider to him. But yeah, then shows the intelligence of saying, "Hey, she was cursed," so that way the dwarves didn't think badly. But then also when inviting the dwarf,
Yeah, she just ropes
mentions,
in the dwarves immediately. Because like, hey,
but not even
free
that.
weapons and gear.
Yeah, but not even that. She then goes out of the way to be when he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll let you in." She's like, "Oh wait, no, you have to help create the city. You have to pay taxes eventually." Like she doesn't say right away, but eventually you have to pay tax. She's
Right, right. She's
immediately,
immediately setting up the
yeah,
you can't just roll in here and goof around the whole time. You got to work.
she's already thinking of the future of the city. Of like, okay, we need to like you guys are good at making stuff. We need you to make stuff. Like down the road, we're gonna have to be able to afford things, so we need taxes. You guys are gonna have to pay. She's already thinking about all that. And then
She's
she,
also the secret mastermind of trying to get uh, Mio and Makoto. It's like, oh man, I guess I'm first servant. I will have to attend the master. And Mio's like, no, you
yeah,
can't possibly.
uh, she also threatens the one in for better rates. Like she's thinking
Yeah,
finances.
12 gold. Yeah.
Uh, man, she can read minds, manipulate spaces, and specializes in illusions for powers. Like, uh, and then she invites the ogres to the demiplane. Like every single race, she was the one that initiated them coming. So
Mhm.
I that's the big one I think I forgot about was I almost remember it as it was his idea to like create the city and have these, but no, the entire thing's Tomo. Literally, he's
Yeah.
just like, I would like to make a city in the demiplane. Everything
And she's
past
like,
that
I
is
got
her.
you, fam.
Yeah. So yeah, so Tomoe is just she's amazing.
She's the secret boss behind the.
Everything, and it just astonishes me. And then you have Mio's character, who I feel like Mio's a bit more one
She's a bit,
dimensional.
she's a bit weaker in the terms of characterization.
Yeah.
I assume she'll grow a bit because, I mean,
The problem is I
I
don't know
don't
where they
know.
could take her. Like just her characterization in general is very one dimensional. It's like
Hmm.
she craves magic and
Makoto's attention.
well, but she wants his attention because of his magic. Like she absorbs mana and he's
Hmm.
just overflowing with mana. So
Right.
she's just obsessed with like consuming his mana. So that's why I find it hard to figure out where they would take her. But let's get into Makoto. So
Yeah, the
obviously,
main character of the show.
yeah. So getting into characterizations, let's get into Makoto. So one of the cool things about the setup of this anime is for an isekai, they do, as I mentioned in my slogan, turn a few of the tropes on their head. One of which is the fact that he was not bus chand, like He was,
Oh, right. He wasn't killed. It was just like, sorry, man, I made a deal with your parents. I gotta do this.
yeah, I don't think I put the note down, but if I remember right, he just shows up in front of the god. Like, didn't fall asleep, it just straight up appeared in front of him. Uh,
Also, side note, Tsukiyomi, total bro, clearing Makoto's history and all of his porn.
yeah, that was, I think that was one of my, like, uh, hit picks of this was like straight up the characterization, the humor is excellent. And that whole first like half episode was just loaded with excellent humor. Yeah, him being like, I know what you're about to say. I've taken care of all your porn and stuff. You're good to go.
Right.
It's just excellent. The whole premise that he got put in front of him and then he's like, hey, yo, it's time for you to go to the other world. And
You
he's like,
should have
I have,
done this.
yeah, he's like, I don't, what are you talking about? And then him being a bro again, like, oh, they said you knew, like you agreed to this, and then goes and explains the entire situation.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
it's not just a, oh, hey,
It's
you,
not a here's the plot dump. It's here's the plot dump for a reason. The main character doesn't know the plot yet.
well, not just that, but the fact that the world didn't just, they didn't just take him to another world. So this is an excellent writing where within this moment, I don't feel like I'm being spoon fed information, but the writer managed to tell me A, the premise of the show. This guy's going to another world, and he's gonna be a representative in this other world. B, I can tell you everything you need to know about the character of the main guy. He went out of his way to agree to go to another world that he didn't have to agree to. They didn't force him into it
No,
because
right.
his sisters would have had to go without him.
Right, yeah. The rule was the thing given to or his parents believed to be the most precious to them, which was their firstborn son in this case.
Yeah, or just one of their
Following
kids.
up, yeah,
So
one of their kids. So
that's what he said. It's like, so if I don't go, one of my sisters has to. And so
yeah,
he agreed to go. He doesn't want to go to the other world. He wasn't excited to go to the other world, but it tells us that he's the type of person who was willing to do it to protect his sisters.
yeah.
Which
He
is,
seemed relatively happy in Japan, which is not usually an isekai protagonist. It's usually like, oh, I hate the world, or I'm the loner,
or you died. Like,
or you died.
you didn't have a choice. You're being reincarnated just because. So yeah, it was a really nifty twist on the trope and very efficient way to give us all the information we needed without feeling spoon fed. So we learned about the main character, we learned about the premise, we then learned about the goddess, who is kind of another twist on the trope of like the person who technically is in charge of him. Like we kind of got two gods, which normally
We
you
got
don't.
Tsukiyomi, and we've got the goddess of the other world,
Yeah,
who
but
I don't think is named.
no, just they refer to her as goddess, but they also turned the trope on the head where technically the goddess that's in charge of him is a horrible person and he hates her. It's like normally the god is not necessarily. So there's usually two tropes, which is that the god is on their side and constantly helping them, or the trope of like the god just set them up really well and then placed them in the world.
This is actively harming them by dropping them out of the stratosphere and giving them basically no gifts.
And then later just being like, hey, you're ugly, I hate you, I don't want you in my world, so I threw you in the border. But
go die.
Well, but she kind of goes back on it and tries to use him by like plucking him out and putting him down in front of the adventurers. I think that was straight up her being like, you're not one of my heroes, but
you stand here as a body shield for like 30 seconds or something.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to use you anyway. It's like, so yeah, plucks him out, sticks him in front of the adventurers. Is like, two things are going to happen. You're either going to help me and like kill them, or you're going to act as a meat shield.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting to see that too. She's actively harming him now. So as far as Makoto,
swearing vengeance on her.
Yeah. Which is great. As far as Makoto goes, do you think he is progressing though, as far as character goes?
I think he is, just not in a good way. because we see a couple of scenes of him breaking mentally, in terms of that the adventurer who came to the city and blew up a couple of people, and
Yeah.
he just brings her into a shadow realm and stabs her in the throat.
Not just that, he slowly
The
stabs her.
walk, I wrote that down. The walk is so menacing.
Yeah, and just the fact it's slow. It's not like he, as far as I
Yeah, yeah,
remember,
it's not a quick slash. It's
yeah,
a
yeah, just in nice and slow. Yeah, he that was crazy. Which it kind of reminded me back when we were covering Spirit Chronicles, and he had his snap. That same thing of like them using a mental instability to create almost like a hero's downfall. Not that our character is a hero in this circumstance.
right. He feels more like a demon king.
Wouldn't that be cool if that's just kind of what ends up happening?
Yeah, he's just the demon king. I've noticed that humanity as a whole tends to follow the general premise of, they were made in the image of the goddess, this narcissistic, very beautiful person.
Yeah.
That all the humans either are clumsy, foolish, narcissistic, but they're all really beautiful, which they cover in one of the very early episodes of like, everyone is gorgeous.
They kind of mentioned this like 2, 3 times of like, yeah, they're all super attractive. I don't know if they follow a lot of that, but I feel like one of the main themes of the humans in this world too is ignorance. Just ignorance of everything outside their own culture.
Or ignorance outside of themselves.
Yeah.
The adventurers in the first town don't believe that Tomoe and Mio could be of that high level. They just write it off as a joke. I
Yeah.
mean, mostly because it's higher than the known adventurers, so these random people out of the middle of nowhere
Well,
couldn't possibly be.
not just higher than the known. So to put this in perspective, I hope I made note. I might not have transferred these notes over. Oh, I did. Okay. So not only that, Tomoe comes in at 1320, 1,320 for her level. Mio comes in at 1,500. The highest person in that first town is 444.
Yeah.
They're 2 to 3 times, actually 3 times
stronger on a linear scale.
On a linear scale than the highest adventure in that town. The highest adventure, period, is 920. So they're almost 50%, like Mio's like 50% stronger than the highest known adventurer. Right. So, yeah.
Which, and 2 random people showing up on a border town claiming that they've got this level of strength. It sounds like nonsense to everyone who can do math.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And on top of that, you mentioned it's linear scale. This is probably very much not linear. Because you would assume if it's like most video games and stuff, you're more of an exponential scale because you get access to abilities or certain spells that just scale ridiculously. And you can just take one look at like some of the stuff Makoto does against the 2 adventurers at the end, and that's not linear. Like, in essence, firing off a nuclear bomb.
You're
like,
right.
The moment
and
you
can
can
survive that.
Yeah, the moment you can trigger that. If you can fire off a nuclear bomb, I don't think it's linear. Like, so, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Those 2 adventurers, their strongest stuff was just swinging at him and casting magic, which in a comparative scale, I think that was about the equivalence of what Makoto was doing in the first episode of like just casting Breed or the fire spell.
Yeah. With that being said, we are kind of digressing, but since you brought this up, I do want to mention it. Does something feel wrong about Mitsurugi? So Lancer.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, he was obviously connected to that sword she was using that Makoto broke.
He's in essence Tomoe, as far as I can tell. Well, no, like
Like
a con- a contracted.
weapon, or yeah.
He's a contracted elder dragon. So Sophia apparently contracted with him.
Oh, right, because Tomoe said Lancer is the dragon.
That Sophia beat. That's why she's called Dragon Slayer. Is she beat Lancer? So
And she actually
Mitsurugi.
just made a contract with him.
Yeah. So why is he so weak?
I don't know.
He feels weak. Sophia's level 940. You look at Tomoe. Tomoe's 1320, becomes 1340.
But also, doesn't Tomoe say Lancer lost?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a weakling, but still.
It's like, so I guess maybe he's one of the weaker elder dragons. He felt, to me, he felt kind of weak. So I didn't quite pick up on it the first watch through. The second watch through is when I was like, oh, that's the elder dragon Lancer that apparently Sophia beat, is Mitsurugi. But he felt weak up against Makoto when they were fighting. Like, it almost seemed like Sophia was equal to him.
Well, Sophia got the jump on him, but after the first damage, she didn't really do anything to him other than like surprise him with things, not actually cause him more damage.
But even Mitsurugi didn't seem like he was doing much. Like, he did the huge ice AoE spell, like towards the beginning, which was cool.
Yes, the visual combat in this is pretty good.
Okay, let's get into combat then, because we'll keep talking.
No, we're digressing again.
No, we'll keep talking about this with combat because it goes hand in hand. This is one of the few isekais I've seen where I felt like the tactics were top notch. Like, not at first, but they eventually showed it. And this is a good talk of that, where in that fight, when he creates all the icicles in the air and Sophia just takes him up in the air and drops him.
Mm-hmm.
How cool of a tactic is that? I'm going to put you through a spike minefield in the air.
Right.
Have fun.
And also, even if you make it all the way down, you just landed from the stratosphere again.
Yeah. So how good of a tactic is that? It's using brains, where that probably is pretty easy for him to pull off. He created all these huge spikes on the ground in a giant AoE. So creating a bunch of just smaller icicles in the air.
Right. Things you can bounce off of, I think she was doing.
She was just, jumping between them, because for her, I'm assuming one of her main features is mobility. Like, she seemed like a
speed warrior.
Almost
she's just strong enough that it doesn't matter, but
yeah. She's going around, instead of with daggers super fast, it's a giant greatsword in essence.
But that the greatsword is also contracted with Lancer, so it's probably pretty light. It's probably a pretty good weapon in general.
But no, the tactics were just astounding, and I actually had a OMG moment when I was rewatching it again, where Tomoe tells them, like, I forget what his name was. It was Toa's party when she was training him, and I forget which one of them it was. Hazel-san. Like, she's talking about magic. Like, Hazel-san, you need to, like, the best defense is an offense. It's like, use magic.
You can't just support.
Yeah,
you have to do other things. And everybody's like, you can do other things other than heal us?
Yeah. Well, not just that, but Hazel's like, oh, I can't. It's going to take up too much mana. Like, I need to use my mana support. And Tomoe's like, hey, you don't have to use a lot of mana. And she just puts water.
Have to breathe.
Yeah, she puts water over the guy's face. Thank you, writer, for showing that, like, something as simple as removing the oxygen from someone's nose and mouth kills them. Like,
right. You're immediately out of the fight. If you can't breathe and you weren't aware of this, like, if you weren't prepped for zero oxygen fighting for the next till you kill that guy, you're out of luck.
Yeah. It's, man, you don't need a level 8 instant kill spell. All you need is a level, what is it, 3 control water. Like, put a little water on someone's nose and mouth, they suffocate and die.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, a freaking isekai showing proper tactics of, like, magic usage. You don't need a giant arrow of fire. You just need a little bit of water.
I think that goes along with the obliviousness of the humans, is they just assume a caster has to do all the healing or do big attack spells and kill things instantly. It's in their heads. this is how things are done. The strong guy wins,
Yeah,
not the smart.
and it goes into the magic system of this world too, where it does follow a bit of the trope where the magic system is this world does follow the same rule of magic is up to the imagination. Your imagination was what creates a spell, but a world has tried to make that easier and fallen into the habit of generations in they only know like a certain incantation to do a certain effect.
Mm-hmm.
So they've fallen into that same issue of like, oh, I know that, what is it, Bree is like this little fire orb that I can like throw. Like
Right.
technically you can have it do anything. Like that word just means fire. So you're just imagining through that word that effect.
Right.
And it isn't, they do fall into that trope, but they do take it decently further, I guess. Like immediately when he uses it against Shin, I do appreciate the fact that he doesn't do something ridiculous. He just does that a bunch of times. And since his mana is so high, it's super powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really early in. I'm wondering if the author hadn't figured out the combat system.
But that is an interesting thing with the magic system. One, the whole concept of contracts is nifty. I do like this idea of not only is it a contract, like you usually get spirit contracts in other isekai too, where it's like, oh, you make a contract
with a fae or a small orb of light.
Yeah, but then he goes into it further and says, okay, no, a contract is not like we are partners. It is, we are going to compare magic, and if one is bigger than the other, it becomes master servant. And then you each gain benefit based off that scalar. So the larger percentage gains more benefit. I think it might go the other way, actually, where the servant gets a bigger scale.
The servant gets a bigger bonus from contracting to a strong master.
I'm curious to see how they progress farther with this idea that contracts not only give each other like a bit of a power boost for being in contracts with each other, but this concept that apparently they made it sound like you have the ability to use powers of your servant.
Is it unconscious use of the abilities, or you can learn to use them manually, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's the weird part is and the part that confused me was obviously because he does it, there's that if you have a strong urge to have a certain effect, like a certain thing happen, and one of the powers relates to it, you can just use it like out of nowhere, which is what he does. He had that strong urge to reach out to that adventurous spirit.
And yes.
So he managed to use Tomoe's power of the illusion and all that. Dimensional control.
Yes.
But then they mentioned, it seemed like they mentioned that you could just straight up use the power if you train or learn, but it couldn't feel like it was a confirmed entirely thing, because I feel like at one point they almost talked back about that, where it wasn't something that you could just train to use. I don't know.
I'm not sure they covered it significantly, which may indicate the author was saying, like, I'm not sure if I want to give him all these powers.
Yeah, it partly could be, and it could be something that they're probably going to explore later. And I kind of hope they do, because that does make you wonder, what would he get from Mio?
The hyper regeneration, I assume.
Probably. That would be the most obvious. So his mission is to, in essence, follow the path of his parents, learn about his parents.
Right.
Do you think that's actually being played out at all?
No. Well, we learned about grants near the end of this season, which tells me that the author was like, well, okay. It could just be that the timelines lined up of like end of the season, we learn about grants, which are in this thing, or the author forgot over the course of several, I'm going to say, books of like, oh wait, I'm supposed to be leading him towards this goal.
Which, I mean, maybe this might suffer the same.
We only got the first step on this journey.
This feels very much like the issue we had with Spirit Chronicles, where this aspect of it is just set up. Like this whole first episode is almost like a prologue to the real story, because we already have the promise that the next season is just a magic school show.
Are we
Like
sure about that?
he's going to the
I
academy.
Yeah, but he also said he was going to set up a shop, and that lasted like 3 episodes in itself. So
I
it could
mean,
just be a Magic Academy for 3 episodes because he's just like, oh, all right, let me show off my magic power with this orb that measures your magic power. Oh, it broke.
yeah,
Bring me a larger one. Oh, it broke.
yeah, and it could be like arc one is him in school, and then the rest of the season is him
It's
running
something
from the
else.
goddess or something.
Because there's still the Demon King's army still invading. I mean, he routed them somewhat, but you just go around the large hole and like rally your troops again.
That's true. I think they did say that both sides took substantial casualties. So
Yeah, because he froze the whole section of the world.
yeah,
But they
and
also mentioned that there were other heroes that were summoned.
yeah, there's three. I think no, two other than him. There's three
Yeah,
total.
two. Yeah, three total. Two other
So
than him.
the two real heroes, and then him, since he's technically not a hero. He wasn't granted the goddess's uh, blessing
Because he wasn't
in
pretty enough.
essence. Yeah, he wasn't pretty enough. Let's cover his powers real quick because you mentioned at your beginning that he has all these powers and he's super strong, which is a typical trope that they do follow. But he's hesitant about his powers. Like he doesn't seem like most people where he's obsessed with gaining power, where he's chasing like being overpowered. Like he almost wants the opposite, where he'd rather just not have the power.
Right. He wanted to. His first thought was, "I'm going to become a merchant."
Yeah.
In this new world, because it would be an excuse to travel.
Yeah, and learn about his parents and stuff. So,
and also he's got a negative opinion of adventurers, considering that first town was just full of jerks.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about his powers because they're somewhat interesting because they do follow the trope of he's overpowered, but I actually feel like some of it is neatly against the trope of it. So first off, his OP thing from Tsukiyomi is Kai, which is pretty OP. But at the same time, I do feel like the writer, we could tell that he didn't quite understand it to begin with.
So it's kind of his excuse to add random powers.
It is a bit. So first off, with Kai, he can create a area around him. They specify semicircular, which I almost feel like it's probably circular, but like why would it go underground or why would he pay attention to what's underground? So later I wouldn't be too shocked if like that comes into play.
If he's fighting midair, because his Kai just lets him fly at this point, it would actually just be a circle around him.
Yeah, so he can manipulate the space inside it. Literally, they just say manipulate.
Right.
So in essence, anything.
He's basically got a demi-plane if it's around him.
Yeah, so they show off him using it to search. He says he can strengthen things inside it. He can heal, except not himself inside it. And then he can manipulate it. They don't say this, but he can manipulate it in layers. It's like he stacked multiple Kais on top of each other, which is just kind of weird. How does that make sense?
I don't know.
It's like, I can manipulate the space around me. Somehow I can manipulate the space around me 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
at the same time. Same space. This yeah.
Maybe it has to be focused in some way. I think it's just an excuse to give the main character powers based on his creativity.
I guess, yeah. It almost is written as I want something to happen, so this is my excuse just to say it happens. Like I want a certain outcome as a writer. I can just say it's this and get it.
And you don't have to write spells that other people can use. You could just give the main character this special power, basically.
Yeah.
And because other shows have shown like, oh, here's this wide area search spell or standard healing spells, or air manipulation, barriers, that all those types of things other people can do.
I think I'd be more accepting of Kai if the writer went into a little more detail about how these things happen, because it's a nifty concept that he can manipulate the space around him. So if they gave me a little more detail, I think I'd almost appreciate it more. Where it's like, okay, he wants to heal, for example. You look at something like, I think it's what's it called, 100 Million Lives or whatever, that aired last season. It was nifty that one of the main characters in that show got the ability to heal, but he didn't heal. In essence, all he did was just accelerate natural healing. So it made me appreciate that more because it gave it limitations. Like, all he's doing is accelerating your natural ability to heal. So if something's such a grave wound, or if something's, stuck in you, it's not going to do anything. You can't naturally heal through that. So I think if they gave me a little more detail about Kai, about how his healing works, it would make it more interesting. And then that would give you, I think, a bit more of a nod to, okay, the writer thought this through. Like, it give it more interest.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's just an excuse to do spells without writing spells.
Yeah. So I feel like if you put a little more detail into explaining these effects that he's doing, it would just make it more interesting, because it would go past the whole, you just wanted to write an excuse in for him to be able to get this effect or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with how much.
It's possible it will be explained later. Maybe he'll teach somebody to use the bow and like diffuse their consciousness and then come back. And then they'll learn how to use Kai. Okay,
speaking of one of his powers, I don't understand that one at all. And we have to talk about this, because to me this almost was even more of a hand wavy thing, where it was like, okay, so in this world, which I think makes sense, when you die, your consciousness diffuses and becomes part of the world. Makes sense. And you can think of death that way, where your consciousness, your soul dissipates out into the world. Your energy rejoins nature.
Yeah, rejoins the force.
So with him, with his archery, his idea of thoughtlessness and trying to focus on the target, which is a thought you use in archery, I feel, a lot of times for people who do high-level archery, that thought process of dissipating into the world mentally and focusing on the target actually dissipates his soul in this other world.
At least that is how Mio and Toei see it in terms of being able to read his mana. His mana disappears of sorts, so they think he's dead. I think there's a disconnect on how the other world sees what is happening and what is actually happening.
Well, part of me wonders what they see him dissipate, because if it's mana, if like he literally just extends his mana out into the world, then it makes sense why he doesn't actually die. Like, if it's not a soul or his consciousness that he's dissipating, but if he's actually managing to control his mana and dissipate it out, then that would make sense a bit more. That in essence, he's dissipating his mana out, and when he reconglomerates it, pulls it back together, he in essence like almost like scooped up more in the process.
Right. Yeah. In between the space of the target and him, every bit of mana in between those, he just collects.
And then it would make sense why he's getting stronger every time he does this, because he's in essence casting his mana out as a net and drawing it back in and getting more in the process. So that would make sense to me if they talk about it later, and that's kind of what happens, is that they perceive mana, and this could be a translation issue. Let me know, people who understand Japanese and watched it in Japanese, if this is a translation issue, that in essence, they're seeing his mana go out, not his consciousness or being, and they perceive that as death. Like, since everything probably has mana to an extent in this world, that's how they perceive death, is that your mana, in essence, it's no longer being held by your consciousness, so it just dissipates out into the world. I think that, to me, would make more sense, and I wouldn't feel as confused about this, because I had to rewatch this 2-3 times, that part, to fully understand what they were trying to say.
I think it was intentionally unclear because it's a difficult topic to explain. It might be explained later in more detail, or it might just be the reasoning they gave for why he's now 7 demon kings walking towards you.
Seven?
I don't know if they actually said if his level of demon king increased, but
no. At the end of that, they said you are now as strong as the goddess.
Right.
He is as strong as the goddess now. So yeah,
fight. Gonna take over this world.
That's why he keeps trying to freaking hide from her, especially now. Is he's like, oh, if she sees me now, like, there's a problem.
Apparently, she didn't check because she teleported him away.
But he's wearing rings. His ring and his cloak is suppressing his power. So she found him, but he's weaker.
He suppressed.
Yeah, he looks weaker than he is. Speaking of which, I did want to quickly bring up, since we mentioned Dropnir. Oh man, talking about humor, I love his relationship with
with the dwarf. It's like, I will definitely bring you a ring that will kill you.
Yeah.
Definitely make clothes that will kill you for sure this time.
Yeah, Rigui's just like, I got you. It goes from like, yay, we're gonna make you this magic item, which is Dropnir to start with, and almost immediately turns into, wait, this thing I made that I thought would potentially kill you, but like,
don't ever put it on; it will kill you, and it breaks instantly. It's like,
I just love that relationship. That's such a good humor that is added in. And man, it gets ridiculous because by the end he's wearing what, 10 rings, 10 Dropnir rings,
and the whole set of clothes, which also do the same.
Yeah, with the clothes and the chains connecting them, which I'm assuming means that all of them act as one giant mana storage. And speaking of the writers paying attention to detail in his own world and story, the fact that he recognizes that Dropnir in essence absorbs magic, and he even says when it turns red, it's full. So like you need to take it off quickly or else it'll try to keep absorbing and become a problem. Then turns around and uses that as a Chekhov's gun I did not see coming the first time. I actually missed it the first time when the explosion happened.
Yeah.
That
they were all like breaking to power this massive spell that he uses to nuke the adventurers.
Not that with the not that adventures, the adventures in the illusionary city. I did not pick up first time that the thing that blew up
was one of his old rings.
An old ring.
Oh, I didn't notice that either.
Yeah, it was one of the old full Dropnirs that was so full at capacity that it was cracked and exploded. So,
and then okay, and then they used the same technique to blow up that spell.
So him explaining, like, you have to take it off because if it gets too full, it'll explode or something will happen, something devastating. It was a Chekhov's gun to it blowing up in the city, which was a Chekhov's gun to him using them as a nuclear weapon against the adventurers later.
Right. And then another one, because Tomoe says, I used a leftover broken ring and my mana to make the new fragment of myself.
Great writing. That was actually clever of the writer that I didn't pick up on the first time. Like that, so well done. Not just, I need an excuse for his mana to get weaker, so I'll create this magic item that absorbs mana. He then uses it multiple times in a building cascading system.
I can't wait for this is what I expect to happen is I expect the fragment to get blown up again with Makoto's mana, but because she was made with the mana of him, she's just going to absorb some of it and just become like an adult.
I could see that happening. Part of me also wonders if they'll use her as a barter. Like she'll sacrifice herself to defend him or something like that.
That would be bad.
Yeah.
That's world-ending Demon King level.
Yeah. So that part of me wonders if that might become something too, where maybe something threatens the illusionary city or whatever. She sacks herself as his mana, as like a martyr, and then that could trigger another super depression phase.
Mm-hmm.
So not only would he potentially not once again defend the illusionary city, but the loss of another fragment would make him snap again. So that would be another option to go with. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, because it's, I think, a bit of a Chekhov's gun, or they overlooked, is Rembrandt. I don't quite understand Rembrandt, because he helps Rembrandt, save his daughter and wife, daughters and wife. And then Rembrandt immediately after that, they show him, the back door. Oh, so we might.
They're still following him because he's obviously strong and he's setting up a competing merchant thing.
I don't know, because they sit there and he's like, in essence, he says we're gonna have to watch him, like, if he steps against us, like, well, one, we need to be ready, because if he steps against us, we need to rebuttal, in essence, against the main character. But then every action they show so far is just him helping Makoto. Maybe the writer did feel that Rembrandt was going to be more of a bad guy against him, but as he was writing it, he almost just wanted to not touch that.
Yeah, it could be that he fell off the idea of wanting to do a villainous or merchant arc, basically. Like they did the merchant arc of like setting it up, and then he was like, I'm kind of done with this. Let me move on to something else.
Yeah, and it could be maybe he planted the seed in case later.
In case later, because it could just be Rembrandt's trying to help him up, and then he's going to take over the whatever Makoto sets up, and that was the plan.
Yeah. So it does. That first comment almost feels out of place, which it would make sense if the writer dropped that idea of like, okay, down the road Rembrandt will oppose him. But yeah, either A, didn't want to write that, like got a few more in and was like, I don't really want to touch that. Or
he
maybe,
wants to leave it for later.
Yeah. Or he's like, I'm going to set this here and I don't quite know what I'm going to do with it, but like this could be something to play with later.
It's on the board. I might come back to it.
Yeah, it feels like a Chekhov's gun that he doesn't know if he wants to fire, which we'll see if he does. It kind of irked me because it seemed almost promising, and then every action after that feels opposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of kept the character in there with, hey, we're going to kick this person out of the shop to give you that space.
He's still a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Just getting into some fun things, quick things. First off, I'm a kind, gentle guy. Looks at the dead two-headed dog. Definitely not gentle. Such a good remark away.
The immediate humor, you can kind of tell. It's like look over his shoulder.
Yeah, Emma's just like,
and immediately books it.
I don't think you're quite as gentle as you say you are. Just that humor, that line was just first episode. I think it was first episode.
Yeah, that was first episode.
Also, the jab at other isekai and slash like superhero.
Oh, the first girl he rescues is not a pretty girl. It's a
orc. Yeah,
orc
looks like a pig-faced
woman.
And then on top of that, he does it again later when he's fighting Tomoe. Desperate punch into backhand. Now for the finisher, frog jump uppercut. Like
all of his attack names suck.
Yep. It's like not only every attack has to like have a word to go with it, like a name, but they're all like crappy, horrible names. Then they just never touch it again. Just a great jab at other shows for like having to announce your attack when you do it. It was just so good. the Kai suppression, like when he learns to suppress his Kai or tries to suppress his Kai. Oh, this is actually. I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to skip that one for a
He
second.
tries to suppress his mana.
And it's one less Demon King. But I'm going to actually come back to that one in a second because that's going to lead into a nitpick I have.
Okay.
The adventure cards, cool way to get that whole game UI, like
Right, the communication.
yeah, just hand wavy it over.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, you get this adventure card. It's like your communication. It's your like map.
Wikipedia. It's your map. It's everything you could possibly need.
Yeah. Just it's nice that it's not a one. They don't give it to you right away. It's like, well, let's learn about the world. Let's get him in the world doing stuff, and then we'll address the whole. How do you talk to people? How do you do all that? Right.
Well, also, Tomoe can just use telepathy because she's his main companion in the early, along with Mio, and they both can.
That's yeah. Why does it seem like everyone can use telepathy?
Who knows?
Is it part of the contract? Maybe.
Probably.
Maybe
we'll just say it like
that. Oh yeah, we already talked about Rigui. Love just that character in general. Love the fact he's trying to kill him. And then yeah, my other like hit pick was proper combat technique. Was there something? Do you have any hit picks? Things that you really liked?
I like that eventually Emma becomes just the secret boss of the demiplane. It's like, I'm ruling this.
Just out of nowhere. And she's so... I love the fact that they show that she is... This goes into the whole trope thing we just talked about a second ago. She's quote-unquote not attractive. She's like super cute pig, in essence. Like Miss Piggy. But she is that... I could imagine her character being the tall, thin, long black hair, like anime trope character, where they're super proficient, backstabby almost with like how passive aggressive they can be and like how conniving they can be. She almost has that character where she tells who she tells someone to tell Tomoe that Mio is like, eating things.
Yeah, eating the memories. So Tomoe runs off to go protect them and gets roped into translating them immediately,
just
because you snuck back secretly.
Yeah, it's like
to eat crab.
How do I get her to show up so I can make her do work? Oh, just puts that knife in there of like, oh, Mio's eating the doesn't even say it, but implies that Mio's eating the memories to get her to show up. And it's like, oh, well, while you're here, why don't you do your job?
And I won't tell the master that you are just screwing around.
I have a few nitpicks if we're ready to get into nitpicks.
Yeah, let's go into that.
Okay.
I don't really have much because I really enjoyed this.
So, a few nitpicks I have. One, let's go back to the hit pick that kind of was a nitpick. So the whole Kai suppression, loved the humor about, oh, you could try to suppress your mana, and then like it goes from 5 Demon Kings down to 4.
Yeah, 4.
Well, he tries to suppress his power, 1 Demon King goes away. Later, though, he decides I can suppress my mana using Kai, rather than just like imagining it. Why didn't he do this at the beginning?
He's definitely learning to control his powers more as the episodes go on. So I would say he just didn't have that ability or didn't think about it.
Then why didn't he just keep doing it? It's like it gets to the point where I forget why he had to suppress it with Kai. He didn't have his equipment for some reason. I don't remember why. But at one point he doesn't have his equipment.
Well, they cut off some of his fingers.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think this was before the fight because he took a bunch of rings off, blew them up as well. I'm trying to remember when it was, but at one point he didn't have his equipment for some reason, so he had to use Kai to suppress his power until they could get him like more drop nears and stuff. It's like if you get to that point where you realize that you can use Kai to suppress your power, why not just always do that? Why even bother getting equipment again?
It probably takes mental focus. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't use mana. Kai doesn't use mana. So I just didn't get it. It made no sense to me. It's like, if you can use Kai to conceal your power, why at this point even bother with the equipment? So I don't know. I didn't quite get that. That was a bit of a nitpick. It's not a huge deal because yeah, you could try to say, well, maybe it's just he doesn't want to always focus on it. Maybe he needs it kind of when he's sleeping or something, like when he can't focus, he still needs his mana to be concealed.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a bit of a nitpick where all of a sudden out of nowhere he knows that he can conceal his power using Kai and then just doesn't always do it that way. One was the Rembrandt thing. Like Makoto, I would imagine he knows that something's up with Rembrandt. Like the adventures.
Well, Tomoe knows something's up with the Rembrandt. Makoto seems willfully ignorant and just goes along with what people say to his face.
He seems almost too ignorant of Rembrandt. And if they mentioned, just had Makoto kind of nod that he knows something's up with Rembrandt, but is just like, okay, I'm gonna go be super nice to him. Go
along with it. Yeah.
Until I'm strong enough, I'm not worried that he's gonna be able to do anything to me. So I'm gonna nod that I know something's there, but just use him or try to make a positive relationship. It'd be fine. At the moment, he just seems almost overly ignorant. It's like
yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, kind of willfully ignorant. And it's just like disregarding the adventurer's reasons for it because the adventurers cast the curse in the first place.
So it's just a bit of a nitpick. It was just, At that same point, though, why didn't the butler catch the vials? Like later, when Hazel shows up, the butler just throws the rag out and catches him. Why didn't he do that when the first two were dropping?
Like, I couldn't tell you. It could just be that the butler didn't expect the alchemist to be a clumsy idiot the first time and then started carrying that around afterwards.
Maybe. It's just, Makoto goes and yeets his head into a wall to catch the two vials on his back. And the butler does nothing. And then, later the butler's just throw a rag out, catch the vial, and it's all good. So I was like, why wouldn't the butler just do that the first time? Attempt to at least catch one of them. And it would be one thing if they showed him, say, trying. That would be nifty if, say, they show him reaching out or something, but Makoto's just way faster. And he kind of sees him and just stops or whatever. But it's just a bit of a nitpick.
I can't really explain that.
Last comment I have is, this is the last nitpick I have. Why does Tomoe not know about Hasegawa?
Oh, from his memories?
Yeah.
She should know that. I suppose you could brush it off and say she just only cares about the samurai dramas and not his regular memories. But
the only thing I
couldn't tell you that.
It's she's been delving through his memories all the time. The only thing I can come up with is that when she delves through the memories, it's like a book. And she just hasn't seen the chapter or hasn't seen any of the
how long? What part of his life was he spending watching all of these samurai dramas?
Well,
was this pre-meeting the Hasegawa?
Most likely, but it comes up to how did she get to those memories? Is she seeing a giant, say, array of monitors that play out different parts of his life, and she's just not seeing the monitor about Hasegawa? Just it didn't catch her eye or something? Is it a book where she's flipping through it really quickly, and maybe it doesn't catch her? It just seems really odd that one, she doesn't recognize that what's her name looks like Hasegawa, Toa. So it's weird that she just doesn't recognize in essence that they look similar, especially after he shows interest in her. And they even mentioned it's almost like he knows her, or I think she even straight up says,
you think you'd go back and review things about his history because you're a stalker.
Yeah, I think she even says at one point she must be similar to someone he knew from another. Why would you not, going through his memories, look this up?
It's possible it's harder to get memories of a first person thing rather than while you're watching TV and you just kind of zone out. It's easier to pull that zone out memories. I don't know. I don't know how the mechanics of stealing somebody's memories works.
Yeah, it kind of irks me. It's like you would think with how much memory she's gone through, you would think with knowing that she's similar to someone from the real world, and so much so that he became obsessive and depressed. Like when they're trying to save
And
her.
immediately sent them both to get her out and destroy the city. Basically, it's
Yeah,
all his fault.
you would think that she would try to figure it out. Either know, like pick up on, maybe not right away, but know, oh, that person from his memory that looks similar, it's her, or at least try to figure it out. It's a bit of a nitpick. It's like, come on, she should know, or she should figure it out. And maybe down the road she will, but that was a bit of a nitpick. I think a lot of that stuff is why I couldn't quite give it an 8. Was this didn't delve deep enough or emotionally enough for me to want to give it an 8. It was almost too lighthearted.
I think they probably didn't want to go too, like, we had some real dark moments in this, and I can't imagine the author wanted to do all like deep delve and dark moments from the past in the first probably book. I'm not entirely sure how much this covers.
I would imagine going forward they might get more into a emotional investment into the characters and a like hero's downfall and rise to get more emotion out of us. At the moment, the only downs we had to try to get emotion out of us was the fragment dying and that explosion, and then him going crazy after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel enough out of that to warrant getting up into like an 8-9 territory. And I think a lot of that is this is just more setup, and we might potentially see that with a continuation, getting more investment into characters. Because the fragment I had no real investment into, or those characters. They were just characters in the world. They didn't give us much of a reason to care about them. The only thing for the fragment was she was cute. Whatever. So we didn't get that much into it.
And then immediately, also Tomoe took some serious damage from like a tenth of her brain exploding.
Yeah, and then for him going crazy, like it hasn't given us enough emotional. It hasn't given me enough emotional attachment on the main character to make that go anywhere. Especially when they almost immediately switch his brain. Like it's not like he went crazy and they had to like save him, or there was an emotional investment into recovering that downfall. It was, oh yeah, my mom said that things dying is sad, so now I regret the fact I killed someone.
I thought about that a little bit deeper than that, because it seemed like he didn't know that it's sad when things when things die, and that's the only reason he started crying.
The way I took it was, we know he's a nice guy. Like he went to the world so his sisters didn't have to. Like he's not a bad person. Like he's a nice person. The way I took it was he was so distraught because he blamed himself for this happening. It's like, I should have seen this. I should have planned for this. You know, it was bad. So he snaps mentally. It's like, I liked these people and you killed them. It's my fault and your fault type thing. So he goes, kills her. And then he remembered what his mom said, that like, it's sad. Like when things die, it's sad. And it kind of snapped him back to going, I just killed someone. Like, this is a bad thing.
Said the sentence before it's sad when things are dead was, am I sad because I killed her? No. And then it does the flashback.
And maybe this is part of what we'll have to learn later is, did he renege on that thought, or did he, is this something
kind of blow it over? And maybe we'll find out, because the second season was announced. I did check that.
Yay, because I do want more of this. It's such a good setup that I feel like it will.
Yeah, and the humor is great. So
the humor is wonderful. I just want more emotion out of it, and they're setting it up to where that's possible. So they continue to develop the characters, and you know, get a good hero's downfall in there.
Yeah, yeah. Bring us the demon king who's gonna overthrow the goddess.
Then it would be wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Let us know in the comments, email us at animedigression@gmail.com or tweet at us at animedigression. Let us know, what was your thoughts of the show? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you disagree with us? Do you agree with us? We would love to hear it. Also, let us know what shows you want us to cover if there's a certain show. As I mentioned, watch out on the Twitter for what we will be covering next, because we do not quite have that finalized yet. So with that, thank you all. Please have a good time, and hopefully we see you in another one. Bye.
Bye.